Welcome.
Why, hello.
Welcome to the Israel state. I'll
Hey,
be servicing you today.
wow, your role as a non-Jew, huh?
No, that's Christ.
As Christ,
Yeah,
to bear the burden of everyone.
exactly. I might get stoned to death,
Crucified,
crucified.
nailed to a cross.
Mhm.
The Jews didn't do it, but they did.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah. That's what's so funny. I don't know why they try to deny it. It's like
Hmm.
the story is that the Jews and the Romans colluded to kill Christ. And it was really
Hmm.
the Jews who were pushing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The Romans
Yeah.
were like, And like apparently he had an audience with Pontius Pilate, who was
Hmm.
the Roman ruler of Jerusalem, and he was kind of into him. He was like, "Oh, this guy's like, and then the Jews were like, "No, kill him."
Well, he also mocked the Jews by telling him, like, you're going to send this guy to his death, but you will let a murderer free. Like, what has he done?
Exactly, yeah, because the Jews were basically wanted to exchange him with prisoners,
Hmm.
right? They were like people who were murderers or something, and then they like no, like take him instead.
Mm.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. There was a point that you brought up. Let's see if you can recall it. Uh, we were talking about Christ the other day.
Mm,
Do you remember that conversation?
yeah,
And there was another proof that was actually it was pointing even more to the fact that he's immoral against
mm,
the $5.
yeah.
Do you remember?
No,
Started off, I think
yeah.
it'll
I don't know if I
populate.
remember the exact points we were making, but I think ultimately it's like he got so close. I do remember we were talking about his argument on Shabbat, where he's
Mhm.
arguing against the rabbis, like, you know,
Oh, I remember.
yeah,
I remember the point. It was
oh,
that when that woman who committed adultery
yeah,
and he was like sitting on the floor or something, and he
yes. He
said,
said you who cast the first
"Well,
stone.
they asked him, what should we do with her?
Mm,
She's an adulteress."
right,
He said, "Whoever is with sin, cast the
without
first,
sin.
or without sin, cast the first stone,"
Mm,
rather than referencing the Torah, which is, "Are there two witnesses?"
exactly.
You guys are just speaking freely
Yeah,
on what you
exactly.
think.
And that was what we were talking about. And the whole point is that instead of Jesus referencing the Torah law
Hmm.
as the basis for either condemning this woman or not, which is, are there two witnesses? Did we see this happen? Can we establish that this is a fact? Instead, he's going into some hyperbole, some romanticized language. Thou who hath not sinned shall cast the first stone. Right? It's like that's not the response. That's not the Torah response. And so, we also were talking about how he says, it says in the Torah of Moses, you can divorce your wife, but
Yeah,
I say only if you find in her a matter of immorality. Even though that's literally what it says in the Torah of Moses.
yeah,
If you find in
it's
your
not
wife
any different.
yeah, if you find in your wife a matter of immorality, then you could send her away. So,
And the bad part about that is the fact that he's saying, "And I say this,"
yes. Yeah.
rather than "This is the law."
Yeah. But he's trying to contrast as if he's saying something different, as if Moses was just saying, yeah, divorce your wife whenever you feel like it.
Mm-hmm.
Moses never said that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. He said, if you find in her a matter of immorality. So, yeah, I mean, that's the whole point is like what I notice increasingly is that every good idea is in the Torah, every bad idea is not in the Torah. And like the reality is you don't need all of these other sources. You don't need all these apocryphas. You don't even need the rest of the Old Testament if you have the Torah, right? You don't need it. Maybe you have some important history points, some, nice sayings and prophecies and parables. And I'm not saying all of it is bad. Obviously it all exists.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to sit here burning books. But the reality is if you want to know what you really need to know, it's just the Torah because the Torah contains all of the necessary information. There's nothing that's not in there. And then once you start venturing into these other books, now people are like, well, someone was like telling me, oh, read the book of Jubilees, and like that's
Jubilees.
just one of the Apocrypha.
Yeah.
And it's basically a word for word repetition of the Torah, but then it just adds in random like bullshit details that are unverifiable. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, well, I don't trust this source. Like, it doesn't matter. It also doesn't matter how like, and there were 22 species of animals. It says that. It's like, no, there's not 22 species of
Yeah.
animals. Like, what are you talking about, right? Like, now I have to sit here and fucking justify this. That's what pisses me off is like, these people, they believe in these sources with such authority, and then they have to sit here and justify it. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
don't have to justify it. Just say it's wrong. Just say it's like, like, oh, the
Mm-hmm.
Talmud says non-Jews aren't humans. Yeah, fuck the Talmud, like, oh, like,
Mm-hmm.
the whole point is like, these sources don't hold the weight that people claim that they hold. And so instead of just disputing it and saying like I'm not bound to what some lunatic rabbi said 2,000 years ago, Instead, they have to sit here explaining like why rabbis need to suck babies' penises when they circumcise them.
Mhm.
It's like, no, they don't need to, and they shouldn't, and they should stop doing it. I don't know why they ever did it, and they definitely should stop.
Mhm.
Like all of these things are so easily said if you have the willingness to just stand up and say something. And that's the one thing we're talking about Jesus is they were saying this guy's talking with authority, right?
Yeah.
And like that, like just stunned the people. They're like, oh, someone talking with authority? Oh, he must be the son of God,
Mhm.
It's like you can talk with authority if you have the clarity of God's wisdom backing it.
But even every cult leader talks with authority,
Exactly. Yeah. You
and
can talk
that,
with authority about the wrong thing.
yeah, it just
Yeah.
places them under a spell.
Yeah. What's funny
And
is like the rabbis try to talk with no authority, even
Mhm.
though they're grabbing as much authority as possible. They're like, me and my humble opinion. If only I was as great as my Rebbe's Rebbe, but I'm also gonna tell you what to do for every fucking second of your life and try to control you,
Shit,
through humility. Humility. Yeah.
that's awful.
Yeah. Well, tell
So,
tell tell us about your inner
oh,
journey.
sure. I guess first I want to share this story because it ties in.
Okay.
So recently, I've been kind of there's been a deep dissatisfaction. Uh, Not necessarily through. It's not a dissatisfaction in the reflection of my life so far, but more uh, intangible dissatisfaction that I couldn't figure out. But also at the same time, I was going against it. Um, I was not putting it in front of my face. I was pushing it off, thinking it's a temporary emotion that is just uh, within something I can control. Right. So I brought this up to you. I brought it up to Dan. I brought it up to Naftali yesterday. And Naftali does a lot of that work anyway. So he's able to quickly identify it. And through his own spiritual journey, he's able to grab a lot of fragments within his life to help me out. And whether or not he knew he was helping me out or he was just speaking freely. See, like I don't even want to say these things in between because that's my intellect talking. But so he comes up to me and he asks me, uh, "How's everything?" And I just told him the truth. I'm like, "Not well. I'm actually going through some stuff. I'm not sure how to like piece it together." And right before this is me speaking out of humility. Right before he walked in, I was actually like trying to solve my issues. So I thought, why not use my personal assistant, ChatGPT? So I wrote out what I thought, and I was just saying, feel some sense of dissatisfaction. The closest thing I can uh, identify that kind of resembles this dissatisfaction is post graduation depression. Have you heard of that?
So you graduate a step and now you're just
Yeah, so
left.
a lot of students that graduate college, they're always achieving goals and little milestones, whether it be completing classes with an A or B or just barely passing to, going to your next year, getting new classes, finishing your semesters, getting projects,
Tangible goals.
tangible goals that they can actually like study for, prepare for, and pass. And then they finally graduate and now they're in the workforce.
Mhm.
And usually in the workforce, first thing you do is do a rudimentary job, right? You
Mhm.
kind of like just plug in numbers and you keep going and you're doing the same thing every day to get the practice in, right? And whether or not you scale upwards or not, depending on the position, that's pretty much what you're doing. So they developed this depression that just because it's a huge change in their life, they went from scaling upwards through their school to just staying stagnant. So that's what I used in my prompt for Jet GPT, and I explain a little bit more, like from what I know, like there are things I want to do, and I'm just not doing it because I'm being lazy. Like I want to be able to study Torah more. I want to be able to um, do better in my work, right? There are things that I know that I can do, but I'm just not making those decisions. I want to improve my nutrition. I want to improve my training, and I have no aspiration, right? And that's what it was able to identify. Seems like aspiration is really the true word that you're trying to figure out. And I was like, okay, like what can I do? Started typing. What can I do to further improve these things? Ask me questions if you need it, and it just like gave me homework. So I did all this right? And I was like, okay, cool. I have a game plan. Like this is something that I know that works because we prescribe it to people in our gym, and that's how they get to their goal, like consistency, right? Like you make them do these things, and you just keep doing it so that you can keep up your fitness. Like why not the same thing in my spiritual journey,
Mm,
right? But the missing piece I didn't have was the fact that this is a spiritual journey, not a homework journey.
yeah.
So I talked to Naphtali, and he was um, Naphtali has a very unique way of speaking, so I'm not gonna try to quote him. But what I took away from it after this walk around the parking lot is that he himself went through a transformation where he was always in his head about like I can control my emotions, I can figure my way out, I can get
It's
out
like
of
a
my
problem
situation.
solving mentality. Yeah.
Problem solving mentality. When in reality, um, it is a heart issue, not a brain issue,
Mm,
not a head issue, or
mm,
your eyes, whatever you want to call
mm,
it.
mm,
So I couldn't, as he was speaking on it and going a little bit more in depth, I was trying to recall like my life, and I started realizing like that's how I've always operated
mm,
since my childhood. Just like there were, not going to say that there was no love, but I never learned fully like how to feel all of these emotions truly deeply. Uh, so I started thinking like, what is everything that I'm experiencing that I think experiencing that I think is love, that I think is sadness, that I think is joy, and then I caught myself, why am I thinking
yeah.
about this,
Think
right?
about
Yeah,
your
thinking about
feelings.
my feelings,
Mm,
and it's just this loop that I
mm,
just like need to train myself out of,
mm,
and yeah, either way, I think I feel like I do want to share that. So, uh, in my faith journey, when I started believing God, it was an intellectual leap, right? And I had moments where I felt and I cried, and I had like a lot of emotions that really moved me. But I took a leap of faith, right? And I've said this many times before, where you're assuming this is true, and you're going to attach yourself to it. You're going to shackle yourself because you want to believe, or you do believe in that there's fruit at the end of this. So now that I'm being consistent in my life, I'm seeing the fruit. However, I'm not experiencing it. I'm not experiencing it. And fast forward, all of this is kind of like jumbled in my head, and we end up bumping into this woman outside of Moses Fitness, and this woman's nuts. I didn't know she was nuts because I kind of gave her benefit of the doubt. She was like jumping ahead in conversation. You've had that, we've had that together, where we speak, and then you are answering when it's your turn to speak. You're answering my next sentence,
mm,
and you're jumping ahead, right? Because
okay.
you know where you're going with this,
Mm,
and and I thought that's what she was having. I was like, okay, like fine, like I wasn't down for this, but like sure, let's keep speaking, right? Like this is weird, and as I'm trying to piece together what she's saying, I'm like, am I getting lost, or is this lady just delusional? And she ended up being delusional. And we're going, and she's like reading Naphtali and me for some reason. And she's like, "You guys seem very uncomfortable. Like, am I scary to you? Are you scared of me? Do you have fear?" And she's being very condescending.
very like cliche too.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And we're like, "What? Like, what do you like? Where is this coming from?"
Yeah.
And she's like, "No, I just see it." I was like, "No, you don't see anything. Like, I barely met you. Like,
Mm,
what are you talking about? Are you okay?"
yeah. It's almost like the
And
primary example of someone who's stuck in their head.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 And she starts going nuts. She's like, I'm bi and polyamorous.
Mm.
I'm also like
Oh.
just existing on this earth. Like there's a big
Confessions.
picture.
Confession.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
She's just saying random blabber jabber. And Naphtali is like also struck. He's like, what the hell is this woman doing? And at one point, she actually like she she shifts gears immediately. She breaks out of that spell that she put herself in, and she starts acting like a real woman. And Naphtali's like, that's what I wanted to hear. Like, that's real. Right. And then she immediately went back, and she's like, what are you talking about? Like, and she started getting offended, and she was like, do you hate me? Are you scared of me? Blah, blah, blah. And Naphtali ends up leaving because he's like, oh, fuck this one, right? So I stay, and I'm like, okay, fine. Like, I'm not going anywhere. So I keep talking to her, and then she starts saying that I'm like racist for nothing I said. I didn't say
Is she
anything
white or
to.
what?
She looked Jewish, but I don't know.
Yeah, but you're
Um,
you're racist even though you're Mexican. Yeah. Okay.
exactly.
Really?
So exactly, if you're Mexican, you're not racist automatically.
Yeah. Exactly.
So she's calling me racist. She's saying that I want to like hit her over the head with my glass bottle, and I'm like standing like this, and she's like, "Are you also afraid of me?" I'm like, no.
Body language expert, huh?
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, you're in your head right now. Like you're literally just thinking
But
all of
isn't
this.
that like the manifestation of this
Yeah,
problem when you're just all in your head and you're not even experiencing your own humanity?
exactly. Like she has no capability at that moment to feel. And it's tying into what we just
Right.
talked about, and I was able to identify it, and it was uh, great.
That's a wild thing when you can see the things you're dealing with pop up in real life, and it's almost like a message,
Mhm.
being sent to you as to what really is going on inside of
Yeah,
you and how that relates to all people.
and I'm
But
able to see it from an outside perspective on the extreme
yeah,
person,
and then you can see it
right
in you.
away to
Yeah,
immediately.
yeah,
The revelation was immediately.
yeah,
That was powerful.
yeah.
And just to cut a long story short, she's like calling me out that I want to hit her over her head, and I'm like, I'm ignoring her at first, and at one point I address him like, "How do you want me to hold this bottle?
Mm,
Like I'm not gonna hit you over the head. I'm
mm,
not scared of you. Like I don't even want to defend myself, saying I'm not scared of you. Like what do you want?" And it, whatever she's saying, oh, like she's saying all the other mumbo jumbo. And at one point, I was just like, all right, I gotta just like lay out on this lady. And I was like, you're delusional. You need help. I would love to help you, but it's just not my job. Like, I'm done with this conversation. I'm out of here. And she kept talking. I was walking away. At the end, I left, and she was like in a good mood. And she's like, "We're still friends, right?" She was like apologizing in her own way. And I was like, all is forgiven. And I felt like Christ.
mm,
Yeah, yeah, all is forgiven.
my children.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it's fascinating, and the thing is that it's such a subtle shift, whereas people are using their thoughts as a defense mechanism or their words. Just the fact that they're right, like
Mhm.
you can talk it all away. You can talk away the noise in your head. You can rationalize away the pain in your heart. It's clearly a mechanism that we use. And again, like if you were to really face what you're feeling, and I think what you're feeling goes to like who you are.
Mhm.
Like you're gonna have to face like what's within you, and what really animates you. And the problem is, it's not a clear cut response. You're not gonna
Mhm.
get like a problem solved, like ChatGPT robot answer.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like
Yeah,
practical
that's what I was gonna say when you were talking about
roots.
the robot responding to you and like how to be a human. It's like, yeah, well, like the robot is not gonna tell you what it's like to be human.
Yeah, yeah.
The whole point is that these things are beyond words. They're beyond description. You can't uh, easily codify it and systemize it.
Mhm.
We're talking
Mhm.
about things that they don't even they're not even understood to us. Yet there are these spirits, that animate us. And one of the things Moses calls God, he says, God of the spirits,
Mm.
the spirits of all flesh, God of the
Oh,
spirits of all
that's
flesh.
good.
Yeah, yeah, and again, that's of course what's animating flesh. Like we're just flesh, but what is animating us, right? Is these spirits, the soul, and the heart in the Torah is like a very vast thing. It's not just a
Mhm.
cardiovascular
Oh, yeah.
organ, although that's certainly very vital for the physical body. But the heart represents the seat of emotion, temptation, wickedness, but also love, right? So like
Mhm.
there's so much in the heart, like literally evil and love, right? Like lust and devotion and emotion and also yeah, wickedness. Like
Mhm.
this is the product of man's heart was evil, right? And so it's like
Very interesting.
yeah, so like the heart is that part of you that you can't get rid of because it's literally
Mhm.
the center of your entire existence. Yet it's not black and white. It's not just like, oh, it's a good thing or a bad thing. No, like the heart has the capacity for so much. And that's why I think it's so important that we tap into it. And again, are we going to walk away with clear-cut responses? No. And then that's the thing is people like a perceived sense of order, right? The thing is that God definitely creates order. There's plenty of order in existence, but
There's
there,
even more chaos.
but there is chaos. There's a lot of chaos. Like that's the whole creation story, is the darkness on the face of the deep, tohu vavohu, desolate, chaotic, right? And like
Mm.
it's within all that, the Spirit of God hovers on the face of the water, and He parts the water, reveals the dry land, and He's creating order in a hotbed of chaos. And so, for us to deny the deep would be ridiculous. And it's like that's actually the blessing that Jacob gives Joseph. He says you should have the blessings of the heaven above and the blessings of the deep crouching below, right? And so it's like it's the full spectrum. You can't just have one without the other.
Mm-hmm.
And
if you want to go more into it, when God breathes the soul of life into your nostrils, like your physical body is the structure, and the soul is like this formless mist. I mean,
exactly.
that's the way
it's
I
basically invisible, right?
invisible.
So it's like the invisible, the ineffable, the thing that cannot be seen, cannot be said, cannot be comprehended, is the thing that is you in your most fundamental sense. And like literally, when someone dies, their soul leaves their body, and all that's left is a sack of bones. And then you just put them back in the ground, and you return to the earth. So, as valuable as the body is, and as beautiful as it is in the image of God, and how sacred and important the body is. And by the way, through experiencing the body, you also get to kind of get into this space beyond just your head, right? Like you're now like have to experience this entire vessel that you're occupying. But even then, when people do leave this world, it says when Rachel died, it says as she was dying, her soul left her, right? And so it literally describes this process of the soul leaving the body as death, right? And you can see it when someone dies. This is just a lifeless piece of flesh. The person's gone. They're not there anymore. The thing, and the body's quite literally just not alive anymore. So again, I don't think we understand a damn thing about life. I think it's ridiculous that we even think that we could pretend to classify everything with such simple labels, and then just
find
solutions, like as if these are some simple things you can put together on a piece of paper.
A lot of people tend to get the moral code in the Bible wrong, where I believe that the moral code is a foundation laid by God, unquestionable, not because, we are servants and we just bow down to Him, but beyond that, we can only rationalize so much why that is. Right. Same thing with slavery, as we talked about, and we wanted to bring up in this podcast about it being moral or immoral. It's moral because it's given by God, and if we were to rationalize it to prove it or to argue it, we see that if anything, it's the laws in place for slavery are actually in a way kind of hinting at the fact that there should be no slavery. Right. Every slave should be set free at the 7th year.
Yeah, well, I mean,
or given the chance to be set free.
The Exodus from Egypt is God taking the children of Israel out of slavery, right? And again, it's not that like the concept of slavery exists in the Torah. You cannot kidnap someone and sell them; that's punishable by death. Slaves need to be treated humanely and properly, and given what they're given is lodging and food, and they're given a wife,
and they're worth double a worker's wage.
Yeah. So there's definitely all that, but again, it's not something you can rationalize. You can't rationalize it away. You can't try to be like, it just is, and that's the thing about life is, can we claim to say that we understand everything, or why a baby dies, or why an old man suffers, or why all these things happen? No, we don't have the explanation. We don't have the response. But the only response is to actually let it sink in, and you can experience it for what it is, and you don't have to fight it. You don't have to justify it. You can just let it be, and actually let God take that burden. That's the whole point. Is this idea of that we're supposed to take the burden? I think is flawed. Right? It's like no, like this burden is beyond us. Well, that's the whole point. But Jesus is the archetype.
Got you there.
Well, no, but Jesus is the archetype of the guy who takes on the burden, right? And it's like, how good is that as a archetype versus the archetype of the patriarch, for example, in Abraham, right? Or or the servant of God in Moses, right? Men who lived out their lives as humans, lived a natural life and died a natural death, had children, had the extremely close relationships with God, and never were they bearing, everyone else's burden. They were bearing their own burden, and bearing their own burden was enough to affect the whole world.
An interesting point about the patriarchs is that something that unites all of them is how they're moved in their heart to take action.
Mm-hmm.
Right? All of them have divine revelation by God in order to do such a um, rewarding and honorable um, thing for Jewish people, or just for themselves, or just for the world. Moses, for example, it kind of speaks to what we were talking about, the difference between the intellect and the heart. Um, Something I want to throw in there is circumcision of the heart. That's real. Sure, you can apply a million different metaphors, but it's real, right? It's real in the sense that not through the intellect where you cut open a heart, but you actually, God will circumcise it so that it can flood out within you.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Because the foreskin.
Moses is prime example because he couldn't speak, right? He didn't have the confidence to speak. And
You want to know something crazy? That's the same word. When it says that Moses had like a speech impediment, the word is foreskin. Same word.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
foreskin.
The foreskin of his lips. Yeah.
So does that mean that foreskin was metaphorical?
Foreskin is metaphorical when it's referring to, well, no, because Abraham literally circumcised himself.
That's
right?
wild, though.
But yes,
foreskin.
Yeah, the foreskin of the lips, or the foreskin of the heart, the blockage, the stoppage, something that's preventing, as you say, the flow, the openness to be there. What's crazy is Moses is worried about speaking, and then he proceeds to be the most eloquent speaker in all of history.
Yeah.
And like Aaron was supposedly supposed to speak for him, but like Aaron is never speaking. It's always Moses talking. So it's pretty amazing. But finish your statement about Moses.
Yeah, I think where I was going with it is the fact that Moses is the perfect archetype of someone who acts with his heart rather than with his mouth. Even though he does speak a lot of things in order to communicate, so that you may understand it intellectually, just like we understand all the words in the Torah now. But beyond that, there's an aspect that you cannot find through reading, set through experience.
And the fact that he was limited in speech means that he was more endowed in heart and in spirit. Yeah, because the speech is not the end all be all.
Exactly. And it's interesting that in Deuteronomy, he says, God will circumcise your hearts, right? So he's almost speaking as to his own experience, which is God came and circumcised his heart in order for him to take the Jews out of Egypt into the promised land. Yeah. So he will do the same to you, and not just to you individually, but you as a nation.
Yeah, I mean, all of you. Moses definitely went through that, like literally being called to by God and relentlessly being called to. Like, you have to do this, and even if you don't want to. And then ultimately, it results in his son, who wasn't circumcised. This is the literal penile circumcision, that his son wasn't circumcised, and then God wanted to kill him because he didn't circumcise his son. And then his wife went and cut off the son's foreskin with a rock, and then said, Moses, you're my bridegroom of blood. You're my husband in the blood. Because
I'm interested.
That's what it means to be married to
the word blood in Hebrew. Is there another word, kind of like foreskin?
And no. So there's a word for blood and there's a word for foreskin. Yeah. But no, I think it's definitely to the point. And since we don't need our mouths to be fully engaged in speech, we can take us in.
Sure. Let's do it. I'm ready. Something I wanted to speak to as well, going with a conversation with Avtali, is the fact that, I wasn't facing my heart. I think heart is like a good confined word to describe the experience. And I kept pushing it away, right? Like, whenever I felt some sort of uncomfort, and it happens like random moments. It could even happen like now if I'm uncomfortable, right? Like something he gave me that I can kind of wrap around my mind is every time you feel anything at all, whether it's joy, whether it's love, whether it's uncomfort, or just oblivion. I don't know what else how to describe it. Despair. Um, feel it. Like
Feel it.
allow yourself to get in there. Like flow with it. Don't resist it because that's where all the tension lies.
Right. Like if that's what you're feeling, at least feel it.
You can't
'Cause if
battle
you're-
yourself.
Yeah. If you're trying to resist the feeling, you're never gonna get through it. He's told me like the only way, the only way past is through. Yeah.
Yeah, the only way past it is through. I think I heard Chris Williamson say something like that. And then he was quoting Jordan Peterson. Pretty sure a lot of people have heard of that. You know, you someone asked him a question, something like, "How do you?" I don't remember, but his response is like, "You girdle yourself with the tools and make a tonic that you can ingest." And
is this Peterson?
I don't remember exactly what it was.
Who says this?
Peterson.
Yeah, well, I actually love what he said. I heard him say the other day. He's like, what is a true man? In the Torah, a true man is described as a shepherd, right? All the patriarchs are shepherds. Moses is a shepherd. This idea of a man who has to protect the flock through strength, but yet he's protecting those who are weaker. He's not here to exert his dominance on the weak and try to tyrannize them. He's here to protect them and guide them. And that's like a true father.
What's interesting is that Moses and the way he led the Jewish people was not in a cult-like fashion, just like Jesus did, or all these cult leaders.
Right.
They were actually going against him. They were contending against him because they had the confidence to do so. Right. Whereas if he spoke with authority, people would follow him blindly.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
And even the people were able to experience the revelation. And that's what a good shepherd is.
Exactly. That's the whole point, is that there was never an example of mass revelation like it was with the Israelites and Moses, right? Because Moses was simply a conduit. And literally says he was the humblest of all men on the face of the earth, right? So like when he's that humble, he's not here in it for himself.
Yeah,
he even says, God, if you destroy the people, erase me from your book. Because I only exist because of these people. And I think that's just so beautiful, because like as much as these people wronged Moses and God, he still always prayed for them and fought for them. And clearly that convinced God to change his mind,
Yeah. And how fitting is he to be the leader, right? That's the way we think of him, the leader, but he's not. God is the leader, and Moses knows that, and he's trying to communicate that to the people, but they still assume him leader.
Always.
It's very interesting that even though he's the most humble man and he's able to make that distinction, he was the one that was ratted out by his own people.
Yeah, for protecting them.
Yeah, for protecting them, and then cast away. He had to run away, not even cast away.
Yeah.
He had to run away, and then God calls him back to save them.
Yeah. No, it's the whole thing is brilliant. Like, just the fact that from birth he's designated, like he's the child that's taken to be raised as the Prince of Egypt. And then he leaves his comfort as a Prince of Egypt to help his people. And then as he's helping them, he gets in trouble, gets ratted out, and then he has to run for his life, and then he gets called back. And, it's like this whole idea, been having this conversation about marrying non-Jews, right? Because like as a Jew who's like, the Jewish people are not really unified as a people, and they're not actually providing a context for marriage for someone who's not part of their cult, right? And it's like, well, and what did the holy men do when they were cast away from the Jewish people? They just married women, right? Like Moses, like Joseph in Egypt, right? And even Aaron and Miriam, the brother and sister of Moses, are speaking against him that he took this Cushite woman, and God comes and literally destroys them. How dare you, right? And the whole point is that what are you truly looking for? You're looking for righteousness, you're looking for honesty, and you're looking for humanity. And humanity is men and women together having children, right? And it's not about whether they're a Jew or not. Obviously, it's like preferable to marry your people, but it's not a requirement.
No.
And I think that's really a powerful thing that's completely lost on the Jews, is they try to hold their religion over people. No, we're the chosen one, right? It's like, you're nothing without God. The only reason why you are worth anything is because God gave this to you. For you to hold that over others is the exact opposite of what you're supposed to be doing, and it aggravates me so much. And I can't stand to see the kind of elitism that exists amongst the Jews. The same dehumanization the Nazis did to the Jews do to the non-Jews.
Mm-hmm.
And they expect something different. It's disgusting,
Right.
and it's immoral.
It's terrible. Something we spoke on marriage
Mhm.
in the Sunday faith meeting,
Mhm.
and something that I kind of shifted my views on just now that you were speaking, you influenced it, is when I said I try to speak on the practicality of finding your mate,
Mhm.
right, rather than the idea of finding your soulmate.
Mhm.
I pose a different argument, which is it's probably better to shackle yourself to someone who has a very similar upbringing to yourself, right?
Mhm.
So it makes sense that black people marry black people. It makes sense that Mexicans marry Mexicans, Jews marry Jews, right? Like that, because you guys come from the same culture, same background, sometimes the same exact upbringing. And
Mhm.
I speak through my own experience because me and my wife had scary. It is scary how similar we are in our upbringing,
Mhm.
right? And that way you can at least get along as much as possible to grow together,
Yeah, you have
right?
a
But
common. Mm.
a different proposition
Mhm.
is that rather than letting that dictate how you find your mate, you can let all of that go and just go back to who you
Go
are.
back to the basics. Yeah,
Yeah,
you go
who
back to the
you are.
fundamentals. Who you are, human being, male, female. That's where
Yeah.
the Torah calls you back to. That's why, like, when every time
And
I
everybody has to go through
yeah,
that, not just very specific people.
yeah,
Everybody needs
yeah,
to have
everyone,
that
because
baseline.
that's our common foundation,
Yeah.
much more common than culture and all these things. Is go back to the basics of your humanity, and that's one of the things I always like when I'm debating people about the modern day. They're like, "Well, it's just not the world we live in. Like things are different." It's like, no. If you go back to the basics, if you take what is the earth and what is humanity, the fundamental principles, nothing has changed. All the things that humans have done, piling, towers of Babels upon towers of Babels, it's just Babel. It's confusion.
Mhm.
It's not who we really are. And that speaks to why God got angry when they built the tower, right? It's like, what they do wrong? It's like, well, they thought the tower is going to save them. They thought the tower is going to preserve them. It's a freaking pile of rocks, you idiot. Right? Like, that's not where your strength comes from. And but you see this like with the great people, like King David also is chased away from his own people. He's like running for his life because the king of Israel, Saul, wants to kill him, and he has like a
Mhm.
band of like rejects who are following him, and they're like freedom fighters fighting against the establishment of Israel. And so it's a very common theme that the good people are in the minority. It's
Mhm.
in the select individuals who are willing to stand up against the corrupted majority. And it doesn't have to be like that, but unfortunately, it is like that usually.
Mhm.
And I think the change that we're looking for, which is what Moses expressed too, and he said, if only all of God's people were prophets, the change that we're looking for is everyone can access this. Because if everyone can access this, if it becomes a universal consciousness, then we're no longer at the mercy of people doing wrong because we're all share this consciousness. Something Jeremiah expresses, where he's
Mhm.
like, the spirit of God will be in everyone, and that's like the redemption.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
and again, contrary to the messianic thing, where it's all one person who's the Messiah.
Will
It's the
absolve
conscious.
everyone.
Yeah, will absolve everyone. No, it's everyone themselves taking on that embodiment, taking on that awareness. That's where the redemption lies.
Mm, mm,
Yeah. So instead of praying for a redeemer, you pray for redemption,
as a whole.
as a whole, as a people. And that's the Exodus from Egypt. We're coming up on Passover. That's that's the story. The story of the collective being redeemed.
That's right. Now that you brought Passover over, let's talk about pasta.
Pasta
Let's
being
hear it.
unleavened.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
look,
yeah. I want you to explain it.
all I can say is,
Well, first of all, let's
mm,
ascribe definitions to what leavening is,
yeah.
because
So again, there
the direct prohibition is leavening agents
do not have
that
leavening
create
agents and leavened
and
products,
leavened products.
right? And so,
Exactly. So
uh,
if let's just go with leavening agents because you can't have
yeah.
leavened
So the
products without
classic
that.
leavening agent is yeast. Yeast itself is usually based
Yeah, and
in
then modernly there's other
baking
leavening
soda,
agents.
baking powder,
Baking, yeah,
um,
even air, steam.
eggs. Yeah, everything could be a leavening agent. But the point is that once something's cooked, it doesn't leaven. At that point, it ferments, and
Mhm.
fermentation is not leavening. And so, pasta, ironically, is not leavened. Except I was looking like there's some pastas like the
Yeah, but I think that's like very specific pastas that not a lot. It's not the typical.
no, it is. So the typical
Really
pasta, like spaghetti,
does
fettuccine,
not have
is
leavening.
not leavened.
Yeah,
It's more like the gnocchi or like the puff
exactly. The
pasta.
ones that are not common.
Yes, no, the ones that are not common are leavened, but the
Correct.
common pastas are
No,
not leavened.
the ones that exactly the ones that are uncommon are not
Are leavened.
are leavened.
Yes,
The ones that
but
are
like the
common.
basic pasta is not leavened. So
Mhm.
if you're gonna have like um yeah, like gnocchi and stuff like other pastas, but if you're just gonna have standard pasta, it's not actually leavened. So I don't know. You know,
Yeah,
I'm still like on the fence with it because
yeah.
it's such
Well,
a
I think it's very useful to lay down what the Jewish laws are and like what they prohibit
mhm,
outside of the Torah.
mhm.
So, go ahead.
Well, what they prohibit is 5 grains: wheat, barley, spelt, oat, and rye. And they say those are the only grains that we have to worry about of leavening, which again is an arbitrary list. Like it's
Mm.
not entirely arbitrary because those are the classic
But
grains.
beyond that, the kiniyot or
Yeah.
what
Oh,
it's called.
but yeah. But then that's the thing is then they'll say that if you make it about the product, then you're already outside of the Torah's prohibition. The Torah is prohibiting leavening, right? Not the
Mhm,
product, right? Matzah, which is unleavened bread, is made out of wheat,
mhm,
right? And
mhm.
but there's like literally such insane Jews that they won't get their matzah wet. So post-cooked unleavened bread, if you get the matzah wet, it might expand a little bit. So like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like
And
that's
it goes against the whole mixing meat and dairy, their own rationalization,
yes.
which is you cannot have meat and then dairy,
Hmm.
right? Because it cooks in the
Yeah,
stomach,
yeah.
right? But then if you put matzah in your mouth and it gets wet,
Yeah, exactly. It's expanding in your
yeah,
stomach. No, I mean the whole thing's moronic. That's why it's like if the minute you depart from the literal Torah commandments, you enter into a realm of subjectivity and insanity. Where literally they eat matzah. There are some cults of Jews that eat matzah out of a bag so as not to get it wet. You know, and so like
shit.
like we're talking about people that have lost their minds, and so you know it's quite unfortunate. And again, that's the whole thing is that when they come in with this presupposition that the Torah is not understandable unless we have man interpreting it, then now the power is given to man as
Mhm,
opposed to God, and it ruins everything.
mhm.
It destroys the
And
Torah.
then the other foods that are prohibited is corn, beans,
Yeah, corn,
right?
beans, rice, everything. But the thing is, not leavened corn, not
Mhm.
leavened rice,
No, the
because
actual.
leavened corn and leavened I think leavened anything is a problem. Like
Mhm.
like I was telling you, they'll make like a potato cake. They'll take potato flour or almond flour and then leaven it, have like a fluffy cake, and be like, well, it's not wheat, so it's fine, right? And it's like, well, it's a leavened product, right?
Mhm,
When if you have corn syrup is not leavened, it's syrup,
mhm.
right? And so if you have corn syrup, that's not leavened bread. So again, logic doesn't exist for these people. It's all about the tradition because in Europe, like they literally say in Europe, they used to grow rice next to wheat, so therefore rice is like wheat. And the whole point is like if you had a bowl of cooked wheat and a bowl of cooked rice, that's not leavened.
Mhm.
It's just cooked rice, cooked wheat, right? The leavening process specifically happens when it's not even cooked yet, as you leaven it either through an agent or through the natural process of dough rising. But
Mhm.
if you were to like to them, you have to buy matzah that's certified from the rabbi, right? That
Mhm.
they cooked in like under 18 minutes and all this stuff. It's like no, really, if you were to just make dough and put it in the oven right away and have it cook right away, that's not chametz, right?
Mhm.
It never
Mhm.
leavened, right? And so again, the 18 minutes thing is also a completely made up number, and so they like to make up
Do you think they
boundaries.
were there like timing it? They're like, go.
They're like, yeah, they're go. No, that's what they do. If you go to, I've been,
Silence for 18
no, I've
minutes.
been to a matzah
Oh no way.
factory, and that's what they do. They have a timer,
Oh shit.
18 minutes, and they're like rushing, and they're like, hurry up. Yeah, no, and by the way,
Yeah.
like even like if you want to speak about beyond leavening, even just like rising, it takes like hours,
Mhm.
not 18 minutes. Like so tiny bit. It's like what about 17 minutes? What about 19 minutes? Like the whole thing is an attempt
Don't
to.
they have like a 3% rule where if there's like 3% of the whole makeup is pork, then it's still kosher?
Yeah, exactly. Which again is completely made up, right? It's like
Yes.
they say it's gets dissolved like in the food. So like if you have a big pot and a little piece of pork drops in, it's like, it's fine. It's like
No.
no, right? And so no, I mean there's so many loopholes. They're so stringent on the wrong things and so lenient on the wrong things, and so it just comes to adding and subtracting.
Yeah, I think a lot of this ends up confusing a lot of Jews on like what Judaism is. They
Oh yeah,
forget that it's the Torah.
well,
They
they don't even know.
instead they start treating it as a community and as
Hmm.
a
As a
privileged
tradition,
tradition.
yes, as just like a privileged community that gets to
Gets to
yeah
experience the
gets to
community,
gets to
right?
experience the community and the egotistical conversation of adding and subtracting laws to God's laws, as opposed to the community that's
And of
fortunate.
course, that's exactly what's going to happen
Yeah,
if you partake in that.
yeah, and if you make it about yourself, but the community of Israel is supposed to be the people that follow God's law, and sojourners, converts, are welcomed, accepted, and treated the same with the same law. Uh,
Mhm.
Actually, additional care, because this is a human endeavor. It's a human endeavor, and that's what just drives me nuts. Is the lack of humanity is shocking, and it shows. It shows in the people, and there's this statement from the New Testament that the Christians just can't get enough of, where
Okay.
it says that ye the Jews are the synagogue of Satan, right? And
Yeah.
like it's like, well, it's hard to argue that
Yeah.
when you look at the Jewish people, they're not pretty satanic. Like I was telling someone the other day how on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, they
Mhm.
have like they sit in shul all day and they have these repetitious. They beat themselves in the chest, like
Yeah.
guys, right, and they're like slapping themselves and punching. It's like, oh man, like that's dark. God never asked you to do that. Never.
Mhm.
And again, the day that's supposed to be a rest of rests, the Day of Atonement, suddenly
Mhm.
turns into a day of
Prayer all
yeah,
day.
a day of incessant, repetitive prayer that's
Yeah,
drain.
ascribe or
Yeah, they have to
prescribed
finish a
prayer.
book
But
this thick
no,
in
I've
one
gone
day.
through it. I've
In
gone through
one
the book.
day,
Yeah.
all right, right, and it's like, you know,
Well, I mean, they're afflicting themselves by doing
yes, that
that.
is affliction, but it's not rest. And so
Yeah,
the whole
yeah.
thing about Yom Kippur is supposed to be affliction that is restful.
And also to like follow a rule book in order to self-reflect on your past year and
It's the
inflict
opposite
yourself.
of self-reflection.
Yeah, exactly,
The whole point of
exactly.
self-reflection, as we were talking about, is digging deep into yourself, into your heart,
And
and
facing
yeah,
everything that
facing who you
you
really are,
experience. Yeah.
what really is going on inside of you, as opposed to trying to mask it and cover it up with a bunch of words and a bunch of ideas, right? Or even the way that they create the frame that God is judging you and you have a court case and he needs to decide what's going to happen the whole year, and then you need a lawyer, so that's why you need the great Rebbe to be your lawyer,
Yeah.
in your court case. And it's like, what are you even talking about? You manufactured this whole idea. You
Hmm.
manufactured all of these
Sounds like a
concepts.
movie. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, that's the whole thing. Is the reason why people worship idols is not because they're powerful, it's because they're tangible. And so
Mhm.
they place the tangibility of something, and the accessibility of something over the truth of what it is. Right.
Mhm.
And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, just because you can't see God doesn't mean he doesn't exist. Just
Mhm.
because you don't understand his judgment doesn't mean it's wrong. And so it's really just a completely false uh, framework that they have that doesn't allow them to really experience the truth of Judaism, the truth of the Torah, what it has to offer, which is not there to limit your life. It's there to guide you in your life and to actually give you life. And what's so funny is that they'll have to then ascribe that to their practices. So well, like when they're enslaving young men in yeshiva, reading Talmud, they're like, "This is your life,"
Mhm.
right? And it's like, that's not
That's bad.
life. It's not
That's
life.
bad news.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen that pattern repeated a lot within Jews, where they just emphasize the intellect
Mhm.
rather than emphasizing the heart. And
Mm.
I think that's exactly what you're describing in the fact that there's a lot of lifelessness
Mhm.
in Judaism
Yeah.
and in hardcore Judaism,
Mhm.
where like they cannot operate
Mm.
in the capacity with the heart.
Yeah.
They're operating off of words, off of their brain,
Yeah.
off of like years and years of torment and study
Mhm.
in order to like rationalize anything at
Yeah.
all.
And remember, they're
Like
stuck.
how to wipe their ass.
Yeah, exactly. And they're
Yeah.
stuck in a box. They're stuck in a bubble. They've never left. Like if someone follows the system, they're never leaving a certain environment, and the environment consists of a room full of books, and you're like this all day, right? And so you can be in LA, you can be in New York, you can be in New Jersey, you can be in Israel, and you're still in the exact same environment with the exact same.
I have a hard time criticizing Jews. I know that's like your domain, just for the fact that like they're human at the end of the day, right?
Right.
I do believe there are Jews who try their best,
Right.
right? And that's through forms of study, right? Or they're just like brought into this like sheep position
Right.
to follow their leader, right? Their cult leader or
Yeah.
whatever you want to call it. And it sucks because, yeah, there needs to be a good shepherd, right? And people can be led astray all the time.
Oh, easily.
And I guess what gives us a lot of confidence is the fact that in the Torah, God does say that you can redeem yourself, you can improve yourself, you can get out of that loop and become a shepherd yourself. You can become a you can become a prophet. Like, what does that even mean? Like, how do I get there? Like, how much of a privilege would that be in order to become a prophet, in order to become a rabbi, right? And that's been limited by all the different accolades and like courses and study you have to go through in order to become a rebbe.
Yeah.
Right. And it really sucks. Even within the Christian world, it's like you have to do all these things to become a priest. And like,
by the way,
if every in order to become archbishop, you have to go through all these stages, and then eventually the Pope or Catholicism, more than Christianity.
Yeah, but I'm saying you can see these destructive ideas in all denominations of religion and secular, where
you cannot have access to God because you're not at that level.
Yeah, not at the human defined. Yeah, because the humans create.
Level.
Yeah, the humans create this institution. The humans create this certification, and the amount of dehumanization you have to go through in order to get there is you're already destroyed by the time you get there. The idea of like celibacy for priests, or the Buddhist monks isolating in themselves, and but then you don't find God through isolation, celibacy, and a distance.
Yeah, I mean, even then, the people who actually tap into it and they're a priest and they're like, "Fuck that! Like, I'm gonna fuck this nun," right? They get shunned for it.
Oh yeah, they get extremely shunned. I mean,
for doing the most basic thing, the first commandment given by God:
exactly,
be fruitful and multiply.
Yeah, it's like I'm so great. I'm so great that I'm beyond the first commandment that God gave to man and woman. Right? It's like, well, you just missed the boat.
Yeah,
entirely. I mean, I heard this is kind of like a conspiracy, but that like under the Vatican they found like a cave with a bunch of aborted fetuses from all the priests and nuns who were fucking, and like then they can't have the babies, so they just kill them, right? And so they end up being worse, right? That's the whole point. Is like when you suppress these emotions, when you suppress these parts of yourself, they you don't get rid of them. They just sit there bubbling under the surface, and then they come out in some immoral way, right? Whether it's like priests and rabbis molesting kids. Like I had there was a rabbi therapist, psychologist, ultra orthodox guy, lived in like the most religious neighborhood in Israel, and he was a child therapist, and he wrote these books called Kids Speak. And like I literally read all these books as a kid, like 20, 30 books, and like he was like the great authority on children's psychology, in the Orthodox world. Well, it came out that he was molesting and raping children. and in the end he killed himself because like he didn't want to get prosecuted. And it's like, wow, like what a story, like what an ending to that, like the guy who's the authority on children's psychology is a rapist and just killed himself, and like that's what ends up happening when when the real issues aren't being addressed. It ends up coming out in the wrong way, and that's why we need to be so truthful and with ourselves. And what are we putting ourselves through? Why do you believe what you believe? Do you need to believe what you believe? And how is that affecting your life? And is it harming you? And it's hard because it's hard to differentiate sometimes, because sometimes you do need to fight for your beliefs. Sometimes it seems like there are negative drawbacks, even though it's the right thing you're fighting for. But that's why it comes back to what is the only authoritative source? This is the Torah.
And that directly correlates with the opening of the heart, right? Facing your internal emotion. You have to. It's very easy to get trapped in that spot where you don't know whether or not your feelings are correct, right? But they exist and they're there and they're not faulty. Like it's within you. It's very reliable, right? And of course, you have to make the distinction between the feeling and the temptation or the lust
Mhm.
to temptation,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Because they're two different things, but they still are within the heart.
Right. But I think the point there is God says, do not follow your heart and your eyes. Rather, follow his commandments. He doesn't say,
Mm-hmm.
don't follow your emotions, follow your intellect. He doesn't say
Yeah,
that. He says,
yeah,
don't follow your emotions and your
and
eyes, but
you're
your
right.
eyes are really your intellect, as you
Yeah,
were
yeah,
saying. It's your mind and your perception. Don't follow God. Follow
yeah,
his commandments, right? And so the whole point is it's not like the solution is not
yeah. I
your
guess I
own.
was trying to or narrow that field to people who are in these institutions
Mm,
where they're told to go away from God completely without them even knowing
mm,
because they're trusting in the system.
yeah.
It's like be a priest and do not have sex, be celibate. Well, a lot of them end up turning into child rapists, or
Mm,
like they end up having secret
yeah.
little like backdoor
Yeah.
entrances
Yeah,
to
and
have sex with women.
even if they stay true
Because
to
that's
that,
that's
they're tormented and
mhm,
they're hurting themselves needlessly.
mhm.
You know, like who's this for?
There's this movie. You remember the Conclave? I told you about this.
Okay.
It's about like the Pope and like
Mm-hmm.
they're trying to figure out who the next Pope should be. So they have to have a unanimous vote for a single Pope. And there's this one scene where they're blackmailing one of the candidates who's getting a pretty big following because they found out that he had sex with a nun.
Blackmail.
Yeah, blackmail, right? Isn't that so twisted? It's
Mm.
so
Yeah,
backwards where doing something
doing
good
something
is
right
used as
is used
blackmail.
against you. Yeah, I think increasingly that is what we find is like people's the good parts of them are being used against them. You
Mhm.
know, like you're punished for the good parts of you, right? Like that creates the worst possible relationship with yourself, where you hate yourself, you hate the good parts of yourself.
Mhm.
Like that doesn't get more
You
twisted than that.
you can definitely relate to it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think
You've been shunned by your own community.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's the thing is like I'm basically preaching Torah fundamentalism, yet that's considered irreligious because I'm denying the rabbinic authority. You know, and it's like when I had the debate with the Orthodox rabbi, he's like, "Well, actually, what you're saying is really a higher level because you only advocate following God, but that's impossible."
Yeah,
It's
right.
like, okay, great.
Because it's not clear, dude. You honestly demolished that dude. You demolished him. Yeah, he tried to argue like very stupid arguments against you.
I mean, that's the only
Like
arguments they have.
you guys went into this rabbit hole of what it means to covet,
Mm-hmm.
right? And he was like, "What if she was this?
Yeah.
What if she was that? What if she was like this very specific scenario? You want her to be part of your business?
Mm.
Is that coveting?"
Right.
Like, dude, shut the fuck up. Like,
Yeah.
let's talk basics right now.
Yeah.
Like, why are you trying to make this? Like, you can see that your argument is so like
Mm.
low right now.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you're just trying to pick at straws,
But
and
that's what it takes. That's what
I just want to give you credit. You handled
thank
it
you. Thank
perfectly.
you. I
Yeah,
appreciate
yeah.
that. I
And
think
you gave him like you did not hold back because you could have easily been like respectful and you know, I mean, you could have also been very rude, but you called him out, and I think he needed it. You
thank
know,
you.
and it kind of put him in a you can see the shift in him. It put him on his back foot.
Mm.
He started like trying to like back out
Yeah.
of it,
Well, I
which
mean,
is
he
possible.
was a pleasant guy, and
Yeah, I'm sure.
I think he himself took steps away from being a rabbi because he realized that was not
Mhm,
working well for
mhm.
him in his life. But he was ordained as a judge actually to be able to judge rabbinic law. And then it's like you can see how
Yeah,
that just
he was a priest, right?
yeah
Trying to
yeah
be a
mhm,
archbishop.
yeah, and he was, and then he actually decided not to do that anymore because it just wasn't working out for him. But it's like, why do you think it's not working out? Why do you think that this whole institution is so limited? You can reach the top of the institution and still be lost and ignorant and
Mhm.
defending indefensible positions,
Yeah.
and like that's not a good place to be in, why would you want to give your life for that? That's what I just see. I see that with the universities too. Like, look how much people have to sacrifice just to succeed in university. How
Mhm.
many years they have to give away? How many hundreds of thousands of dollars they have to go into debt? Uh, you know, just for that piece of paper, just for that confirmation from a man-made
Mhm.
institution, telling them, "Oh, now you're a healer. Now you're a expert on law. Now you know." It's like all of the most successful people in the world are college dropouts. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like they realize, oh no, this system is extremely limited,
Mm-hmm.
and either I'm going to be like everyone
And
else,
it's
or I'm
used
going to.
against them,
Hmm.
like always.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Like,
they're
who are
not good.
you? Are you a professional?
Mm,
Do you have a doctor's
mm,
degree in psychology to be able to say this?
you're not an expert.
Yeah, you're not an expert.
Yeah.
And they're over here like going through the system with blue hair.
Yeah,
And
exactly. Gender studies and like yeah, literally like the same institution that tells people that they're an effective doctor is the institution that says uh, you have a degree in gender studies and you have the authority to order someone's penis to be cut off. You know,
mm,
so you're a fraud. You know,
mm,
and like it just shows. It shows that the whole institution is corrupted, and for someone to give their life away to a corrupted institution is so sad. And again, it's the security that people are after, the perceived security.
perceived security.
You
That's the
know,
key word.
yeah, but it's
Yeah.
really a false bill of goods they're being sold,
Yeah.
and it's so hard. Like I'm not here to say that it's not hard to
No,
succeed
not
on
at
your
all.
own. It's basically the hardest thing to do, but it's what you have to do. That's what I was telling
Yeah.
this rabbi. He's like, "Oh, it's so hard what you're suggesting." I was like, "It's the bare minimum. You don't have a choice, right? Like this is what it means to follow the Torah. Follow the laws of God without adding or subtracting." Oh, is it
Hmm.
easy? No one said it's easy.
Hmm.
Everything's hard, and that's the whole point. Is like people are willing to accept uh, backbreaking slavery, but they're not willing to accept adventurous freedom. You
Yeah.
know?
I mean, that's the perception I had about when I was feeling all these uh, feelings of dissatisfaction, is that I thought that through consistency in keeping in accordance with the law of Moses or of the Torah, that I would feel some sense of accomplishment, and I did reap fruit, right? But reaping fruit is so different from feeling it
Mhm.
or experience that accomplishment.
Right. Well, that's
And
what I wanted to tell you the other
it,
day. Is like just to give you confirmation is that the fact that you are maintaining all of these things is like maintaining earning a living, maintaining supporting your family, maintaining being a servant of God and following the laws in a world where like the people who follow the Torah are such a tiny minority. Like that's that's huge. And the fact that you still feel dissatisfaction, you still feel like it's
yeah,
not enough. It just means it's
because to
there.
me it feels like it's the bare minimum, as you described it. It's the bare minimum. Like, what's beyond?
Right.
What can I accomplish
Yeah.
further?
But I think you could take comfort in the bare minimum because the bare minimum is so hard to
Yeah,
maintain
but
as
then
it
you're a
is.
bear
Then you're a bear.
for the bare
Bareness
necessities.
cities. Yeah, exactly. No, that's the thing. Is like, you have to start with the necessities, but then yes, like
Mhm.
as a human, there's clearly so much uh,
Yeah, but
growth and
yeah,
expansion.
it's not a lesser form. I understand that.
Yeah.
Like even King Solomon was able to make that conclusion. Not that I mean, he's a grand person. He's had many accomplishments,
Right.
but he came
His
back
final conclusion was it's all
was,
futility, and
yeah,
all you need to do is follow God's
follow God's
commandments and fear.
commandments,
Yeah.
and that's the whole of man.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
the whole
Yeah.
is what he's
Exactly.
claiming. It's the whole of man,
Exactly.
and
Which
that's
means
something I can get behind.
yeah. Which means that all of this perceived
So yeah,
accomplishment is really nothing.
yeah,
It's
it's nothing
futility.
at all.
And who
And
better
that's
to say
something
that
that
than
I,
Solomon?
I, I discussed with Naphtali, and or what I kind of took from it is that, like, I don't need to be pursuing all of this ChatGPT rulings in order to feel a sense of accomplishment or feel a sense of purpose.
Mm.
It, I need to experience it fully, and then
Yes.
like there will still be hardship, and that's where life
Right.
is.
It's not about
It's back.
doing. Yeah. It's not
It's
about.
internal. It's
Mhm.
not about
Yeah.
externally
Exactly.
grabbing
It's
as
not about
much.
externalizing and doing something else or going someplace else. It's
Mhm.
about the here and now and you and the internal
And
world.
all of you,
Yeah.
right? And that's something I think. I don't know if I'm projecting, but I think that's something that a lot of people are experiencing difficulty with, is that everything exists in you,
There's a beautiful statement in the
right? And you need
Psalms.
to understand all of you, and not only understand it, but experience all of you in order to be fulfilled.
There's a beautiful statement in the Psalms where he says, "Within me is Jerusalem." Right? And Jerusalem's perceived as the holy city, the city on the mountain, the promised land. Oh, it's some place. And it is a place.
Mm.
But where is it begin? Within you, right? And that's where the
And where
true
does it take place? In you,
Mhm.
right?
in
You're an individual.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's the whole thing is like it's not about individualism independent of God, but it's if you are an individual under God, then you are actually in your true form being in the image of God, and you get to realize your full potential just through experiencing life. And that's the thing, is like, if we can just get behind life itself is sufficient, right? And this idea that we're always looking for something else is the problem, right? It's like, no, it's just this is enough. And if we were to truly experience this, that
It
would
will
be,
always
yeah,
be engaging. It will
yes.
always be fruitful and just blessed.
Exactly. And the whole point is like, it's blessed, like to have children. I heard some like feminist arguing. She's like, I see some holes in this, right? It's like, my purpose is to have children, to be a mother, so that my children will have children and be parents. And it's like, what is this? Just a vicious cycle. It's like, well, yeah, that's how you're
Yeah.
choosing to look at this. But this is life itself. This is the natural progression of humans. If humans, men and women, were getting together and not taking birth control and not, trying to not have kids, this is what would happen. So now that this is what life is, now you have to find fulfillment in this, not in some other external pursuit that's not bound to who you truly are as a human being created by God, God's creation being good. And if you want to experience a good life, you have to be in touch with the good creation that God made, not with your own formations and your own ideologies that actually
Yeah.
distance you from God.
Yeah. It lights. It gives a lot of light to a lot of Christians who experience grace, and they have this like pivotal um, moment where they experience Jesus saving them, right? Or Jesus came into my life, because I don't even know how I would describe it, but they experience the fullness of life, and of course they give Jesus the credit rather than God.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
that's all I had to say.
Yeah, no, but that was nice what Marcus said at the the faith meeting, where he's like, yeah, I'm a Christian, and like, I like Jesus, but I never pray to Jesus. I never say like I'm
To
doing
quote
this.
him, he's like, "But God,
Yeah, but God,
God."
like God, like if you actually look at the amalgamation of all religions of what human beings are striving for, we're striving for the highest God, right? And so to even have anyone in the picture other than God Himself
In the way.
in the way is breaking the first commandment. Don't have other gods in my presence. Like there is no other gods in the face of God. What it says in Deuteronomy, Yahweh is God of heaven and earth. There is no other besides for Him, right? And like to get to that state of just oneness is this goal that we're trying to strive for. And because there are so many forces and there's so many spirits and there's so many Elohim, so many divine powerful forces, yet Elohim, the plural God, is referred to as one, as a singular, and so that just means that there's hope. There's hope for us to somehow make it out of this in one piece, because otherwise we're just broken.
Yeah, I think that's the other piece that I'm missing right now, is that like I claim to have faith in the Torah, but then there's that faith that I lacked, which is this is the whole of man, right? This is what accomplishes you.
This is the whole of man. Yeah, that's another thing it says. Be whole with Yahweh your God, right? Don't turn to the sorcery. Don't turn to the predictions of the future. Don't turn to all of the diviners and those who are trying to soothsay. And no, be whole with God, right? The hiddenness for God.
Yeah, it's not far away from you. It's within you.
Exactly. It's within you. And that's the whole statement. It's not in the heavens. It's not across the sea. It's in your mouth and in your heart. In you, right? It's like in you, right? not external. And it's a
That
brilliant
brings
thing.
a whole new meaning to it.
Yeah. No, I mean,
Because the way I thought of it was it's within you, like all of these commandments are within you. You can figure it out for yourself. But rather, I think it's alluding to something different, which is your entire fulfillment and existence is within you.
Yeah, which by the way is the greatest possible revelation, which is you don't need anything else. You don't need anyone else. As long as you are whole with God, everything will come together. You'll have the right people in your life. You'll be in the right places. You'll come to the right situations. But if you don't have that wholesome nature and relationship with God, then you'll just be all over the place. And that's what we see. Just this fragmentation. I think it's even in Harry Potter with Voldemort. He like has his soul is like broken into like 6 pieces or something, right?
Yeah, the
and
Horcruxes.
Yeah, and like that's the whole idea. It's like the evil is the division of the unity, of God that is within each and every one of us. And if we try to divide that, we end up worshiping other gods. We end up destroying ourselves. It's something I've been seeing in Carl Jung. This guy, he's an actual original thinker, like one of the only few original thinkers. And he continuously drives at the subconscious and the internal world. And he says, like, you have to look to the depths. He's like, look at what water represents the subconscious. It's just this mass force of subconscious matter that just is destructive, but it also gives life, right? And so it's like, the waters crash and they destroy, but they also plant and they sow the seeds. But what happens when you gaze into the depths, when you look into the water? What's the first thing you see? Your reflection, right? And so when you are trying to attempt to enter the depths, the first thing you encounter is yourself. And so that means that, again, go back inwards, right? So even when you're going into the heights, well, all you see is just a vast unknown. When you go into the depths, you see yourself. And so, like, are you going to try to go fly into heaven? You don't even have wings. Like humans don't have wings. I think God made a mistake in his design. No, like
it's very interesting, right? You have to encounter yourself in order to leap into the depths.
Yeah.
It's not a requirement. You can just jump in and ignore yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And like literally just kill yourself.
Yeah.
But that story of as I walk through the shadow of the valley of death, I fear no evil because God is with me. It shows that person who is whole, who's able to go into the valley of darkness and still have God's protection.
Yeah. Yeah.
No matter where he is, right? The extreme darkness.
Yes.
God
is there.
Yeah, God is there.
What's funny is, though, that in the opposite side, you have a Narcissus who gets so caught up with his reflection that he ends up just falling into the depths and drowning, right? So it's like you can't get caught up with your reflection, and also your reflection is not you. It's just a reflection, right? You are within yourself. But what's crazy is we don't see ourselves. I find that to be crazy.
In Lord of the Rings, I think that's one of the, I guess, temptations that they fall into, right? Frodo, do you remember this scene where he's traveling the swamplands, and there's ghosts, there's the dead in the water, and he gets lured into the water and just falls into the depths,
exactly,
and is just tormented by these souls until his friend saves him.
Yeah, and then that's the idea of being tormented by others. It's like, how long are you going to let yourself be tormented by others, right? As the savior, as the savior boy,
others that are dead.
Yeah, others that are dead, exactly. Which is another thing in the Torah: do not engage with the dead. They passed on; they're with God, right? And so, for you to be dragged down by others, by the dead, it just means that you're not alive, and you're not here. And everything about life and about the Torah's revelation is constantly pushing us back here, back now in this moment. Again, even Yahweh, meaning God of the present moment. Like we're experiencing God in the present moment, and that's where we belong. We belong where God put us.
This is insane. Now I'm piecing together that dream I had. Remember?
Tell me.
Where I got captured by, or I got thrown into the mouth of a cave, captured by Somali pirates, and they were forcing me to go into this underwater prison where they had others that were dead, and they were live beings that were dead in there, chained up in the depths of the darkness of the waters. And however, there was a weird twist, which is they pulled out one person who was alive in order to throw me in.
Yeah, there's only room for you,
and they had control of when I come out.
Yeah. No, I mean that's ultimate captivity, right? Like, you go into the grave alive. I think that's like a statement. I believe what Jacob says, like, I'm going to go into the grave alive, into Sheol. It's like Sheol in Hebrew means like the grave that requests you. It's like it's dragging you in there. Sheol means like request, to ask, right? So like the grave is like dragging you in. It's like requesting you, wants you there, but you have to, actively get out.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It was, and the missing piece that I had was that I did not think of God at all when I faced that in the dream. Yeah, that was the missing piece.
Well, I mean, just to tie back to Passover, the redemption of the Israelites happens when they call out to God, right? Because they're in the depths of slavery. They're gone. I mean, these people, they have nowhere to go. They're just stuck. Like if you're a slave, you're stuck, right? Like they're so broken, they don't even have the strength to revolt. But all they can do is groan, moan, sigh, and call out to God. And just in the depths of their suffering, God hears, recalls them, and remembers his covenant. And, I think that is definitely our only path to salvation
Yeah.
is calling out to God.
Yeah. I mean, World War II is a very similar example. I wouldn't say
Mm.
it's to the capacity of what happened when Moses took the Jews out of Egypt, but the Jews were being killed, and um, they were facing a lot of death and extermination. And I remember reading stories in high school about the Holocaust. And there was this one guy who was speaking his journey and his experience in the Holocaust. And there was a lot of stories that he mentioned in the book. It's called Night, I
Yeah,
think.
Elie Wiesel.
Yeah, yes, him. And he talked to what he observed through others. And there were people who just like abandoned God completely. It was like, I can't believe what's happening. Like I'm done, and they would just die.
Mm.
And he like just kept going on, and he point is, I guess what I'm trying to my point is that America was a savior. It
Mm.
redeemed Jews,
Mm.
right? And I'm not going to say that the Jews called out crying, but
Mm.
like probably,
Oh, I'm sure they
yeah.
did. Yeah.
And there was a savior, and it's not America the savior; it's God the
Mm.
savior,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And
But again, America only existing on the basis of
yeah,
the revelation in the Torah and the
there's
idea of freedom coming
I
from
went to
God.
this Holocaust museum, and there's a beautiful something that moved me. I almost cried, but I held it back because I'm like, oh man.
Mm.
Towards the end, they put us in a mock gas chamber, and they had something playing on the screen, and they quote him because before I think they before they closed the door, one of the Jews knew what was going to happen, and he grabbed one of the guards, and the last thing he said to him was, what was it? He said, the final part of the Shema, which is God is great, God is one.
Mm.
Or do you
Yeah.
not God is great? It's
Hero Israel, God, Yahweh is our God, Yahweh is one.
yeah, Yahweh
Yeah.
is one, and
Yeah.
that was the final words.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. I mean, again,
and it
if
made
God is
history.
one, then that means there is ultimate justice in all of this, even though it's so inexplicable and not understandable, and you can't process something like that. Yet God is one, and there is
Mhm.
justice coming for everyone. I heard a freaky anecdote that I've never been to the camps in Europe, but apparently, if you go to like Auschwitz or one of these camps, in the gas chambers, there's a mark, a hand mark in the concrete wall, because
Oh
someone was
yeah,
like so not wanting to die and like was just realizing what was happening. They literally left their hand mark in the concrete wall,
shit.
like grabbing onto something. It's like,
Hmm.
I mean, just the fact that that happened less than 100 years ago,
It,
yeah,
terrifying.
it's terrifying. It makes you realize that God still judges the Jewish people with so much harshness,
Hmm.
and a lot of Jews abandoned God after the Holocaust, saying like, "Oh, God could never do something like that," right? But
Hmm.
He did, you
Yeah,
know,
he has.
and He has. It's happened, and so there's something again about
God
this.
literally just dispersed all of Israel. Like there's no
Yeah,
land.
yeah, exactly, and just processing that this thing's actually already happened.
Hmm.
It's like you can't
God
you
literally
can't fight it.
wiped the world.
Yeah, exactly. That's the same God that wiped the world out. Like, what do you think God is? Like God is not playing around. And it just means that He really cares about what we do, and He really holds us accountable. And we can either choose to be resentful about that, like Cain, or choose to improve ourselves and
Hmm.
find a way to actually find favor in God's eyes. And it's not some sort of impossible thing. God gives us the blueprint. He gives us the path to find favor in His eyes, and He promises blessing as a result of that. So
Hmm.
we should believe in God's promise. As tough as it is, as unclear as the future is, and we don't know what is to come. But again, what is your guarantee? Is your guarantee the accolade and the title from an institution? Is your guarantee a college degree? Is your guarantee the false security that the government provides? That no,
No.
the security only is from God. The guarantee only is from God. That's what God told Jacob when he's having the dream of the ladder. He says, I'm God, God of your forefathers, and I will provide for you. And
Hmm.
like that, he gave Jacob the confirmation and the guarantee. And like, you better believe that that was what kept Jacob going his whole
Yeah.
difficult life. Is if
Hmm.
God is promising him security and promising him that he'll be blessed, then that's the only thing we have to hold on to.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Joseph is a great example. Like
Mm-hmm.
from his youth, he was just a splendid character who was blessed
Mm-hmm.
so much, and he's one of the joyful characters in the Bible.
Hmm.
He's the one with the colorful coat.
Mm.
He was the favored. He
Yeah.
was the youngest,
Yeah. And
the
somehow
one that
maintains that.
everybody put below them,
Yeah.
right? Because he was a dreamer. He was able to
Yeah.
have these crazy dreams that were divine,
Yeah.
and he just wanted to share them, but he was
Mm.
punished for it.
Somehow he
And
maintained that good nature throughout
yeah,
all of his hardship.
yeah, exactly. He was like prophesizing and dream telling
Mm. In prison.
in prison, for
Yeah.
evil people.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
he still kept true to God.
Yeah. You see something in that prison scenario, like just to see this guy, he cares, like
Mm.
he's already been in prison. He's been a slave. He's been betrayed by his family, by everyone. And he sees that these men look troubled in the morning.
Mhm.
And like, he cares enough to like, what troubles you? What's going on?
Yeah.
Like just that attitude to look to others and
A
to
Jew
care
to
about
a non-Jew.
a Jew to a non-Jew,
Right, to
exactly.
non-Jews.
Can you believe he cared about them? Yeah.
And he still cared about his family after all that
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
And he even cried
Oh, he saved
once
them.
they came back.
Yeah.
And he recognized them immediately
Mhm.
when no one recognized them.
And they didn't even recognize him.
Mhm.
Yeah. Like to them, the last guy who's standing on the throne of Egypt is Joseph, like,
Mhm.
but like, no, he knows, he recognizes, and he saved them all. Yeah. And again, the whole history of Israel played out through Egypt. Them coming down to Egypt ultimately results in the exodus from Egypt. And like, it's a key component in the whole story. And Joseph is
Yeah.
just one of the,
Something that I can take away from Joseph is that, like, even in his position, right, where he was a slave and he ends up being Pharaoh's right-hand man, all he did was ask. He asked Pharaoh, like, can you take in my family? Can you give them land, like their own land, right? It kind of seemed like, oh, the outskirts were like, there's like poor dirt and like terrible soil.
it says he gave them the best of the land.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And yeah, it's just like all he had to do was ask.
Interesting. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true. That's
the reason why I take that
Yeah.
into consideration is that something that's been kind of going in my mind with work,
Mhm.
right? Where I always have this thought where it's like, oh, it's not worth bothering those people that didn't show up to their appointment a month ago. And I'm like, maybe they'll remember, right?
Mm.
And there was this bad review that was left by this one dude that was a mess. First of all, he had honestly he deserved like no anything, right? Like I gave him like a whole year for free, essentially, and then he left a bad review because of some delusion. And Ronson told me, he's like, it's probably worth reaching out to him. I'm like, no, there's no chance. Like, I'm not going to ask him anything. And like the idea or the goal was to give him more free services, just so that he might improve the review, right? He might go back and remember it.
Right.
So I hit him up and I'm like, hey man, like, I was just going through our reviews and I just want to reach out to you and see like if there's anything we could have done to make it better. Like, I'm sorry that you had a bad time. And he actually responded positively. He's like, oh yeah, like, I think I misunderstood. I thought that I was going to work with the very person who sold me, but ended up I got thrown around to different coaches, right? And I was like, okay, like like I'd like to make it up to you. Like, I'm so sorry that that was not clear. If we didn't set the right expectations, would you mind just trying it out? And he's like, what do you mean, like paying again? I'm like, no, like let's just say like 6 weeks. I'll have you work with Ronson. Like, let's keep it between you and I. And of course, it wasn't between him and I. It was like I told Ronson, and he's like, yeah, I'd be open to it as long as you don't tell him. Like, okay. So we did that, and now his 6 weeks are over. And today, actually, we saw that the review was improved.
Wow.
And it went to 5 stars, and he left a really kind review. And it's like I had to do was ask.
I love that. All you have to do is ask.
All you have to do,
but with sincerity and like
Yes.
having a positive relationship with redemption, with accountability, with the idea that there is a way forward, there is a better solution. You're not stuck in the past. Just because the past was bad doesn't mean the future has to be bad. You can learn from your mistakes and actually change. And like, what greater encouragement is there that that's how existence works? That's what God wants from us, and that's what we can do with this time that we're given, because we're still here. Like everyone else who's existed before us is not here anymore, but we're here now. and this is our chance.
Amen.
Amen. Well, this was
I think
lovely.
that's a great way to end it off.
Well, God bless you.
Follow me on Twitter, on Spotify.
Yes. Follow
on Reddit.
on Reddit. Follow and like and subscribe and
Look at you.
But spread the word. You know, I want everyone to be as you do, like at our faith meetings. Just open the floor to questions, to dialogue, to conversation.
If you made it this far, like, might as well just drop a comment, send us a DM, anything.
Everyone
it doesn't
has something
have to be
share.
public.
Everyone has something to share.
Yeah, seriously.
Amen. Well, happy Passover.
Happy Passover.
Blessed.
God bless.
Redemption. Amen.
Amen.